The auction yard in Dry Gulch was filled with rough voices and dust. Men leaned on rails, shouting bids for cattle, horses, and tools. But at the far end, a group of women stood chained together. They were not wives by choice, but by trade. Among them was a tall, wild-eyed woman with tangled dark hair. She looked like she belonged more to the mountains than to men. Whispers followed her, too wild, untamable. No man can control her. Most laughed, but one figure in the crowd, a weathered rancher with grief still carved on his face, didn't laugh. His name was Thomas Hale, a widower who had buried his wife 3 years earlier. Since then, he had worked his ranch alone, raising cattle and struggling to care for his young son. Loneliness gnawed at him, but he had resisted the thought of remarriage until the boy asked, "Papa, when will God send us a mama?" That question drove Thomas to the auction. He didn't want beauty or refinement, he wanted strength. And when his eyes met the mountain woman's fierce and unbroken, he saw someone who could survive this hard land beside him. The bidding began with hesitation. Men mocked her, calling her wild stock and a she-wolf. No one wanted a woman who might fight harder than a man. Thomas, silent until then, raised his hand. The crowd stilled, surprised. "The widower's lost his mind," someone muttered. But Thomas didn't flinch. He laid down the coins and the auctioneer slammed the gavel. "Sold. To Hale." The mountain woman's head lifted sharply, eyes narrowing at the man who had just claimed her. He stepped forward, unlocked her chains, and said quietly, "You're free of them now. Come home with me if you will." The road back to Hale's ranch stretched long under the summer sun. Thomas rode his horse slowly, letting the woman whose name he learned was Mara walk beside him. She refused to ride. Her back was straight, her steps fierce, as though daring the land itself to challenge her. Thomas respected that. He offered water, which she accepted with a nod but no words. When they reached his cabin, his little boy Daniel ran out, eyes wide with excitement. "Papa, is she my mama now?" Mara froze, startled. For the first time, her wildness cracked, and Thomas saw vulnerability there. That night, Thomas gave Mara her own room. She looked at the bed as though it were a trap and sat on the floor instead. He didn't push her. "You're not here to be caged," he said simply. "Help me, help my boy, and we'll find our way." Mara studied him with sharp, untrusting eyes, but something in his steady voice disarmed her. Days passed, and she moved about the ranch with restless energy, splitting wood, tending the animals, doing work most women would not touch. The neighbors gossiped, but Thomas only nodded. "She's stronger than any of you," he told them. Mara rarely spoke, but Daniel followed her everywhere. One evening, he brought her wildflowers, placing them in her rough hands. She blinked at him, and to Thomas's shock, a faint smile touched her lips. That smile stirred something long buried in him, something he thought had died with his wife. Later, as the three of them ate by firelight, Mara whispered something so softly Thomas almost missed it. "This feels like a hearth again." His chest tightened. Those were the same words his late wife had once spoken when they first built the cabin. He froze, staring at Mara in silence. The days rolled on, and the ranch began to thrive with Mara's help. She was unafraid of storms, unbroken by the grueling work and unshaken by the hardships that had driven others away. Yet she carried scars, deep, invisible ones. Sometimes Thomas would find her standing at the edge of the forest, staring into the mountains as if listening to a call only she could hear. He didn't chain her to the ranch. Instead, he told her, "If you need to go, you can. But if you stay, you'll have a place at my side." She always returned at dusk. Townsfolk couldn't understand it. "She's wild as a cougar," one woman said. "How can you trust her around your boy?" Thomas answered calmly, "Because she's already protected him better than any of you would." He wasn't wrong. When Daniel fell near the creek, Mara was the one who leapt in, hauling him out with a ferocity that frightened the boy at first, until she wrapped him in her arms, trembling with relief. Thomas saw it. She had begun to love his son, and though her words were few, her actions were louder than any promise. One evening, a storm swept over the valley. Wind howled, rain pounded, and lightning split the sky. Daniel woke crying. Thomas moved to comfort him, but Mara was already there holding the boy, murmuring words Thomas had not heard since his wife died. "Hush, little one. You're safe by the hearth," his breath caught. The exact words, the exact tone, like an echo from the past. When their eyes met over Daniel's head, Mara froze, realizing what she had said. For the first time, tears shimmered in her fierce eyes. Thomas whispered, Those were her words too. Mara turned away, shaken. The storm passed, but the moment lingered. Thomas found Mara outside, staring at the mountains, trembling as though her strength had cracked. "Why do you speak the same words?" he asked gently. Mara whispered, "Because I too once built a hearth, and lost it." Pain etched her face as she admitted she had been taken from her people, sold and traded until she hardened her heart to survive. Thomas's chest ached. He reached for her hand, rough and scarred. "You don't have to harden it here. You've already given my boy back his laughter. And me. You've given me hope." Spring turned to summer and the ranch became a home again. Mara still moved like a mountain cat, wary and fierce. But the walls she had built began to crumble. She laughed more often, especially when Daniel played tricks on the chickens. One evening, as the sun bled across the horizon, Thomas stood with her outside the cabin. "You've brought life back into this place," he said. "Mara, will you stay not as my helper but as my wife?" She stared at him wide-eyed, torn between fear and longing. Slowly, she whispered, "If you'll take me as I am." Thomas placed his hands on her shoulders, steady and sure. "I don't want to tame you," he said. "I just want to walk beside you." For the first time, Mara's wild eyes softened completely. Daniel burst from the cabin, then shouting with glee, "Mama!" Mara gasped, but Thomas only smiled. "Out of the mouths of children," he murmured. And that night, with the stars blazing overhead, Mara stepped into the role she never thought she'd claim: wife, mother, and partner. No chains, no fear. Only love built strong enough to withstand the storms. The wild woman had finally found her hearth,